The Kenneth Green Vintage Fortified is a vintage port style wine. We use very traditional techniques and very traditional grape varieties in making this wine. Touriga Nacional, which is the traditional Portuguese port grape, is grown in our Carmel Valley vineyard and is basically the primary source of fruit for this wine. It has smaller portions of Shiraz and Durif, which we also use for richness, colour and texture. Kenneth Green was my grandfather. He married the last of the Myatts here in Australia in Nancy, and he was an English gentleman. He loved his cricket, he loved his claret, and both those legacies were passed on to me. We picked the Touriga Nacional at quite a moderate Beaumet, but the Durif and the Shiraz come off at very high Beaumets. They're typically shriveled or raisin berries. And in traditional Portuguese style, fruit for this wine is foot stomped. It's a terrible job because the fruit is typically chilled first, and at 5 degrees it doesn't take long for your entire lower half of your body to numb. The period of fermentation is quite a short one because we want to retain a lot of the natural sugars, and fortification typically occurs after 4 or 5 days fermentation on skins. We fortify with a mixed spirit. It's a 30% brandied spirit with a 70% SVR or neutral spirit. We do this to get some complexity from the brandy spirit, but the neutral spirit helps to keep the purity of fruit flavours. The wine doesn't see a long time in oak, only 6 months before bottling. This is so it can do all its growing up in bottle. The first thing you notice about this wine is the lovely lifted aromatic. It has a very unique kind of orange peel, orange rind aromatic to it, and that is so typical of the Touriga grape. On the palate, this is not a typical Australian port style. It's very Portuguese in that it's not really soft and sickly sweet. It's actually quite dry, silky and textured. As a young wine, you see plenty of soft, plush, rich fruit characters, but in the long term, you'll see a lot more aromatics develop. You'll see a lot more elegance, and some of those flavours will really increase in complexity. Being a slightly drier style fortified than some of the Australian styles, this wine is really well suited to dried fruits and complex cheeses. These style wines are well renowned for their longevity, and recommended cellaring for this wine is basically as long as you can hold it. 30 years plus is not unusual for a vintage port style.